legislation has been introduced just this week in Georgia, and it's being debated in a number of other states as well. With regard to the policy you asked for the Libertarian Party, thank you. Although I'm not here and do not speak for the Libertarian Party, is that there ought to be few barriers with regard to immigration, but there certainly should be no prohibition on the government knowing who's coming into the country and taking reasonable steps to ensure that those coming in are not criminals, terrorists, or whatnot. But this notion of very arbitrary figures, arbitrary admission figures, and so forth, and just keeping people out simply because they're immigrants is not something that's certainly part of the Libertarian platform or philosophy. With regard to marriage, I think probably you'd find that with regard to the Tea Party, the overwhelming, if not unanimous view of the Tea Party folks, and certainly those candidates that were supported by the Tea Party movement, would be against same-sex marriage, and probably to an almost equal extent against recognition of or extension of civil benefits to civil unions and so forth. The Libertarian view is very, very different. Many Libertarians believe that that government has no business defining a personal relationship in the first place. Other Libertarians take a somewhat less purist view that it ought to be up to the people of the states. It ought not to be certainly the federal government's responsibility in any way, shape, or form to be involved in dictating a personal relationship, either directly through something as I think perverse as the federal marriage amendment that was debated a couple of years ago, or indirectly through tax policies, for example, which unfortunately has become the tail wagging the public policy dog in many, many instances, even the healthcare legislation. But I strongly suspect that the Tea Party would be pretty much unanimous against civil unions and same-sex marriage as well.
Well, I want to leave a little time for questions.
Let me make just a quickie. Is immigration in America has been, laws have been somewhat racially driven. The Chinese Exclusion Act, which meant Chinese couldn't come into the country, quotas on Southern Europeans, why, I have no idea, but Mediterranean people, darker skinned, whoever they or we were, if you look like Bob, you look like me, you look like most of y'all, then, there weren't limits, or there weren't, what do you call that stuff on, limits would be the thing, I guess. And then finally they repealed that or changed that, but they had great restrictions on Asians until President Kennedy, and then at least allowed, which some people may think was abused or not, but you could have a father over here and he couldn't bring his wife here, and so they find it with family unification. But immigration has by and large been, again, I think, racially driven. Like I say, nobody complains about, the undocumented Irish, but, a lot of complain about, the Latins, and if I think we had a tremendous influx of Haitians and others that weren't legally in the country. You hear trouble now and they're legally here, but you hear about that too, because it just, unfortunately, that's kind of somehow in our DNA. I think even in the best of us, there's a them and there's an us.
One other thing, Mike, if I could, that particularly I think we as attorneys need to be sensitive to and educate people as to the way these issues that have become very political issues, like immigration, can be used as a wedge to take away other constitutionally guaranteed liberties. For example, there are some local governments, I forget exactly where, but several around the country that are passing under the guise of attacking or addressing the immigration problem, the illegal immigration problem, because the federal government isn't, so that means that states can usurp federal authority or local governments. What they're doing is they're passing, for example, local ordinances that require, that prohibit renting a house or an apartment or even a hotel room, or letting out a room to anybody who's not a citizen. And the way they enforce that, or proposing to enforce that, is if you are going to rent out or lease a dwelling room, even a hotel room, you have to get a permit and prove that you are in fact a citizen. So there's one somewhere in the Midwest, I think in Wisconsin or Minnesota or somewhere, or maybe Nebraska. You literally would have to go down to the local police station, prove that you're a citizen, and get a permit in order to rent a room or a home. And yet a lot of the conservatives out there think this is okay because you're attacking the immigration problem, not thinking, well, what does this do to other fundamental civil liberties that we have in this country, such as the right to contract, for example. So this is a real problem, Mike, also, whether it's the marriage issue, the immigration issue, the drug issue, or whatnot, where under the guise of attacking one of these broad policy and political questions, the government and people are willing to permit the government, or maybe they're just ignorant of it, to infringe other fundamental liberties.